Hello. I'm just hanging out with my Lady Ghostbuster action figures. If you did not see the Lady Ghostbuster movie, it caused quite a controversy because a lot of people did not think women should be in Ghostbusters. And today we're talking about socialization. So we're going to address gender. Why do people think men and women should do things the way they do them? Where does this come from? We're going to learn all about that. If I had a fun theme song, I'd insert it here, but instead, let's talk about socialization. All right, so what is socialization? Socialization is how we learn our behavior. So it's internalizing values, beliefs, and norms, right? It's trying to ingest and then spit out how society thinks we should behave and what we think is acceptable or not. So, for example, if ladies try and be Ghostbusters, a film franchise dominated by men, which I love, by the way. Ghostbusters is like, you know that movie you watch when you're sick and you just want something fun? I watch Ghostbusters. But when women came in, people got really upset because we're used to seeing Ghostbusters as men. So socialization is the result, or is the reason for that. We have been socialized to see groups of people in different roles, and that's where we want to put them. And socialization is also how you internalize what's expected of you. So gender is a really good example of this because when we're born, we don't really care what color we're wearing, but yet we seem to have pink and blue pretty much established for boys and girls. And some people get really upset if a boy baby is put in pink or a girl baby is put in blue. I'm venturing to guess more upset about the boy baby put in pink. This is because of socialization. Socialization is how we have decided what is acceptable for our society or for our group. So socialization is how we acquire our personality, and it also is how we understand the way of life of our society. So through socialization, we acquire who we are. For example, if you're raised in a household where people are very funny and silly, chances are pretty good you're going to have a good sense of humor. And also the way of life of our society, what is expected of us throughout our lives. We also internalize our culture. So here's an example. Here's some pictures of babies. Aww. Oh, I don't know any of these babies. I literally pulled them off the internet. But I mean, come on, how cute are these babies? Okay, so what do you think? Who do you think is a boy and who do you think is a girl? Take a minute, think about it. I'll sort of point to help you. Ready for the answers? Okay, we have a boy. We have a girl. This one's kind of a given. She's got kind of a pastel blanket. We have a boy. I don't know who this kid is, but I love him with his hair. We have a boy here. We have two girls. And we have a boy. Take note if any of those surprised you. Because we're very much socialized into seeing boys and girls in different colors, especially babies, in different designs of outfits. That's how we signal to the world, this is a boy, this is a girl. And some parents, some women, or some moms even put on their little girls the headband so that it's like screaming girl, right? Like the pink bow and headband. So nobody says, oh, what a cute little boy. We very much start out the gate being socialized specifically by our gender. So the idea of socialization, the goal of it is for people to have what's called agency. And agency means that you can act, you can think independently, you can act independently, you can make your own choices. So the idea with socializing people is that so they can eventually achieve these things, right? And this is what most societies want from people, to be able to think and act and make your own decisions. Not a lot of people want someone who is sort of wishy-washy or can't make a choice. Part of our socialization is our social norms. So these are the rules. This is what behavior is considered acceptable. So take a second, write down if you need to, some social norms in our society, what you think social norms in our current society are, what kinds of things are people valued. Me and Leslie Jones will sit here and wait for you. Are you done? Okay. She was my favorite in the new Ghostbusters. So whatever you came up with, I'm willing to bet that you came up with a set of standards that maybe was taught to you by your parents or enforced by people who raised you all the way through school and all the way through into your adulthood. Because there are four major agents of what we call major agents of socialization. We call them agents of socialization. And this starts with your family. So those rules or norms that you've just sort of written down, chances are some of it started with your family and what your parents taught you is acceptable and not acceptable behavior. As you get a little older, this changes when you go into school and you start to have rules in school that maybe are different than in your home. But schools were historically created to build obedient workers so that you would go to school and you would learn how to behave out in the workforce. So you would know how to act in a factory setting, for example. So when you went to school, maybe one of the first things you were taught is that if you needed to use the restroom, you had to raise your hand, and the teacher had to say, "Okay, you can go." Maybe you were given some sort of like really embarrassing bathroom pass. I've heard a lot of stories over the years of stuff people have been given. One of them was the construction worker orange vest. They had to wear that to the restroom, which now in a post-coronavirus world seems very unhygienic, but whatever. But school is probably one of the next areas that you gain some sort of socialization, followed by your peers. At some point, your peers start to like move past your family in terms of influencing you. Your peers start to become that socialization, what everybody is doing is cool, how everyone is behaving, what sort of friend group you have, that kind of thing. And the media. In a lot of ways, the mass media is really bypassing everything else in terms of socialization because we can't escape media. I have nieces and nephews, and most of them could scroll through a phone before they were a year old and find things that they wanted to watch or play with. One theory of socialization is called the looking glass self. So basically, Charles Cooley says that our looking glass self is how we see ourselves reflected in our interaction with other people, and we gain a sense of self from that. So the way you see yourself reflected and the way other people receive you is sort of how you build your sense of self. So if people are receiving you well or positively, you're going to want to keep doing whatever you're doing to get that positive attention from them, right? We build our social identities based off of how other people have reacted to us. If you could think back to the first time maybe you ever really truly disappointed your parents or whoever raised you, like the first time where you really knew you screwed up. For me, I remember being 4 and stealing a tiny piece of candy out of a grocery store and not even thinking anything of it because I was 4. I was just thinking, oh, this is here, I'm going to take it. And getting home and my mother realizing what I did. And I remember hiding behind a chair with a box of animal crackers because I was no fool. If I was going to have to hunker down, right, I was going to have that animal cracker there. But I distinctly remember my mom's reaction to it and how that affected me. This is the looking glass self, your interaction and how other people sort of build your sense of self. So one of the ways that we talk about this is through George Herbert Mead. I'm going to move my face here. And what he called two selves. He says everyone has two selves, the I and the me. So children have two selves, the I and the me. The I is the part of you that's reflective and spontaneous. So the I is the part of you that says, there are no rules, there are no consequences, I can do whatever I want, right? That's the part of you that is super fun, but also super not caring about what's going to happen in the end. It's also the part of you that lets your emotions fly free and lets you say whatever you want whenever you want it and never hold back your feelings. That's your I. And kids have this. If you've ever spent time around babies, first of all, babies are super selfish, right? Like they're totally needy. But if you've ever spent time around children, children sort of exist in their I until maybe like 2 or 3, and they start to realize whatever they're saying or doing is wrong or is considered wrong. But the I is spontaneous and unreflective. The me is a little different. So the me is the part of the self that's called the social self. The me is when you start to realize that that your actions have some sort of consequence, not necessarily in terms of like discipline or anything like that, but just that being totally spontaneous and out there all the time may not get you the result you're hoping for. So the me is the part of you that is shaped and molded by society and tells you how you should or shouldn't behave. So here's an example. A kid falls while playing with other kids. She wants to cry but holds back because she thinks her friends will see her as weak even though she is in pain. Which part of this reaction is the I? Which part of it is the me? So which part of this reaction is the way that she's been taught to behave versus the way she wants to behave? So if you say that the I is that she feels like she should cry and the me is that she holds back, you are correct. So when we're talking about socialization, we're also talking about social roles. Social roles are just fixed patterns of the way we behave. This is something that we give to people, right? Fixed patterns of conduct, fixed ways we've expected people to behave. Also, I want to talk a little bit about impression management. Impression management was created by Erving Goffman. The idea with impression management is that the way we see ourselves is constructed through interaction, and we manage those impressions. So when we are placed into situations, we have sort of like a catalog in our mind of stuff we can access that will tell us how to behave in that position. So for example, when you're on a job interview, the way you behave and conduct yourself is probably different than if you're just like hanging out with your friends. The way you are in class or the way you present yourself in class may be different than it is the way you present yourself when you're at work, for example. Work is kind of a good way to think about impression management, especially if you work in like any sort of customer service industry where you have the you who you are when you are not helping people, and then you have the you who you are when you are on stage or in front of people helping them doing some sort of customer service, right? Like you say to someone, "Hi, how are you today?" And they say, "I'm great. How are you?" You're not going to respond with, "You know what? I got a flat tire on the way here. My life really sucks. My girlfriend left me. My dog died." Like, you're not going to do that. Although, as a side note, I totally did that once when I was working in a gift shop. When I was 16, I had gotten a speeding ticket on my way to work, and it was my first one. And I had started crying in the car, and I couldn't stop. And even through work, I cried and cried and cried through my whole shift. And customers just looked at me like, "Oh, dear God," and like walked out the door. And one really nice lady hugged me and said, "It's going to be okay. It's not that big of a deal." And I was like, "No way, I got a speeding ticket." And I cried and cried and cried. I did not manage my impression that day, but most of the time we do manage our impressions. And this is done through a couple of different ways. So Goffman related this to three terms. Dramaturgy, which literally means that we are in a play. We are presenting our lives out in public all the time. Rarely do we stop. Perhaps even when we're alone, we don't stop with presenting ourselves or our lives. Second is something called the backstage and the front stage. The backstage, or let me start with this one. The front stage tends to be how you present yourself to people. It's what you want people to think when they look at you. So say, for example, you walk into a room full of people that you don't know, you've never met them before. You can walk in and you need to shake hands and hand out business cards and say, "Hi, how are you?" And kind of like really mingle and get to know folks. And, you know, the front stage of you is saying, "I'm really here to meet you. I'm excited to get to know you. This is great. Let's chat." Perhaps the backstage, which is the part that is kind of what you're really thinking. Your backstage tends to be what's really going on. Your backstage self may be going, "Oh my God, I hate this. I can leave in 12 minutes. Just get through these next few minutes. You can do this. This is not something I like. I don't like people this close to me," right? That's your backstage. Front stage is how you want people to see you. Backstage tends to be how you really feel. So that's it for lecture on socialization for now. Thanks for listening. I'll see you guys again. Bye.